video, I'm going to share with you 3 tips to help you to manage your driving test nerves so that you can maximise your chances of passing your test. Now, before I share those tips with you, the first thing I want you to hold in your mind is that nerves can be really helpful. They can help us to prepare for things. They can help to focus our attention, to improve our decision making and also our response times. But past a certain point, they turn into anxiety and start to undermine our performance. They can distract us, cloud our judgment, and interfere with our ability to perform and respond appropriately. So it's really important that you can learn to manage your nerves so that they help and not hinder you. Okay, now a little bit of biology. So there are 2 parts to our nervous system. The first part is the sympathetic nervous system. And this is active when we are feeling nervous, and it can help us to perform better. But if it becomes overstimulated, it creates feelings of anxiety. It creates negative thoughts. It leads to poor decision making and poor response times. The second part of our nervous system is called the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is active when we are relaxed, and it leads to feelings of calmness, clear thinking and controlled action. The way to remember this is sympathetic nervous system begins with an S, like stressed, and parasympathetic nervous system begins with a P, like peace. Okay, well, that's the way I remember it. Now, the ideal is to switch off your sympathetic nervous system when it becomes overstimulated and switch on your parasympathetic nervous system to calm you down, to enable you to regain control of your thoughts, your feelings and your behaviours. Okay, so there's 3 ways that you can do this. The first way is by changing the way that you think about things. Now, when we're anxious, we tend to dwell on the worst case scenario and assume or start to believe that this is the thing that is most likely to happen. So you might be thinking, I'm going to fail my driving test. And these types of thoughts lead to our nerves turning into anxiety as our sympathetic nervous system becomes overstimulated. The way to deal with this is to highlight to yourself how you would cope with that worst case scenario, and then also what is more likely to happen. What's the more likely scenario? And these 2 things will signal to your brain that it's okay to switch off the sympathetic nervous system and switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. So, for example, the worst case scenario is I'm going to fail my test. How would you cope with that? Well, you take another test. And that happens a fair amount of the time. It took me 3 attempts to pass my driving test. Then, once you've done that, put together a more likely scenario. So, for example, well, my driving instructor thinks I'm ready, else he wouldn't have suggested that I take the test. So I need to trust his judgment, put in my best performance, and I'm more likely than not to pass. Okay, the second way of dealing with your driving test nerves is through your breathing. When our sympathetic nervous system is overstimulated, our breath becomes very fast and rapid, as if we're being chased. And just by slowing down your breath, deepening your breath, you can signal to your brain to turn off your sympathetic nervous system and turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. So try this breathing exercise. I want you to breathe in for the count of 2, 1, 2, and exhale for the count of 2, 1, 2. Now inhale for the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and exhale for the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Inhale for the count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale for the count of 4, 2, 3, 4. Now inhale for the count of 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale for the count of 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. What you'll find is that as your inhale and exhale becomes longer, your sympathetic nervous system will switch itself off and your parasympathetic nervous system will switch itself on, and you will begin to feel calmer. And the more you practice this, the better you will become at it. Okay, the final way of managing your driving test nerves is to slow down. Now, when our sympathetic nervous system is overstimulated, we tend to behave in a very frantic way. And simply making the conscious decision to slow ourselves down signals to the brain to switch off the sympathetic nervous system and switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. With practice, over time, you will get better and better at doing this, just taking that conscious decision to slow yourself down. Each one of these techniques used on their own will help you manage your nerves, but if you can use them all together, it will ensure your best performance in your test and maximise your chances of passing. So good luck. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you soon.